Begin today the Gemara on Daf Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says Bameh Menagvan. So this is going back to what it said in the Mishnah, that if you have a wine press that's made from stone and a guy covers it with pitch, he's doing that work for you to give it that cover. So what they used to do is, in order to get out the bad odor that the pitch had, they would pour wine over it, and then it was able to be used. So now the guy is the one that poured this wine. How do you then get rid of the residue of that wine to be able to use it? So the Mishnah said that what you have to do is you have to dry it up. So the Gemara here brings the process of how you dry this up. Zok the Gemara b'met menagvan. How do you dry up this wine that was in this pitch? Rav says b'mayim. It's done with water. Rabbi bar Bachana Amar be'efer. It's done with ashes. Okay, so the Gemara now explains right away, what does this mean? We're trying to dry it up, and Rav says you're pouring water. Rav Amar b'mayim, so that means b'mayim v'loy be'efer. It's with water. It sounds like you're rinsing it off. So it's just water rinsing it off, but not with ashes. That's not going to dry it. Rabbi bar Bachana Amar be'efer, and on the other hand, Rabbi bar Bachana says that it's done with ashes. Be'efer v'loy b'mayim. If you're not going to first rinse it off, you're just going to scrub it with ashes, it's not going to be enough to get that residue of wine in it. So therefore the Gemara says that Rav Amar b'mayim, what Rav is saying is that there has to be water, but v'hu adin le'efer. But you also have to, after the water, there's ashes as well, following it. You scrub it with ashes. Rabbi bar Bachana Amar le'efer, and Rabbi bar Bachana that says that you're scrubbing it with ashes, but v'hu adin l'mayim. But there's also water that's being used before this, or after the efer. And the Gemara explains v'lei pligi. There's no machlokes here between Rav and Rabbi bar Bachana about this, because it depends what the condition of this wine press with the pitch that's on it is. Ha b'retifta. If this wine press with this pitch on it is moist already, so then, because it's already moist, it's not necessary to first rinse it with water. You put ashes, and you scrub it with ashes, and then afterwards you rinse it off with water. So that's the case of Rav, and he was saying that there's water. No, that's the case of Rabbi bar Bachana, that you put first ashes and then water, because it was already moist from before. And ha biyabeshta. But if it was dry, so then Rav said you first have to make it damp with water, and then you could scrub it with ashes. That's how it's cleansed, or how it's dried up. There's actually more to this. So the Gemara here brings, Itmer bei Rav, they learned in the yeshiva of Rav, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav, they said, regarding this, we just said that there's a difference if it's damp or moist from before, or it's dry. So they said, Tarti, Tlas. There's either 2 steps to this or 3 steps to this. And that is, if it was already damp from before, so then you can put right away ashes on it, and then water. That's 2 steps, and it's good. But if it was dry from before, so then it's going to be 3 steps, because you have to put first water, then ashes, and then water again to rinse it off. But Shmuel said that the difference between when it's dry or it's moist is actually Tlas and Dalet, either 3 steps or 4 steps. The point of here is that Shmuel holds that you have to scrub it with ashes twice. So therefore Shmuel says, in the case where it was already moist from before, so you're going to put ashes, then water to rinse it off, and then ashes again. Now Rashi actually says, after you put ashes the last time, you're going to rinse it off again from those ashes with water again. But the last time that it's being rinsed off with water, Shmuel is not counting that, because that's not part of the drying process. Here we're talking about drying up that residue of wine that's in it. That last time you put water is just to rinse off the ashes that's there, so he doesn't count that. And then Dalet, 4 times, is in a case where this wine, where it was dry. It was dry, so you have to first put water to make it moist. Then it helps if you put the ashes to scrub it, and then water again, then ashes again, and then water again. Water, ashes.
Water, ashes.
Water, ashes. That's what it is, right? The last time of water is not being counted. So that's 4 times. What's the nukudah here? The machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Rav is saying that this nigov, to dry out the residue of wine, it's enough to scrub it once with ashes. Shmuel is saying you have to do it twice with ashes. That's why it comes to Tlas and Dalet. B'surah masno hachi. In Surah, they had the version as we just explained it, the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. But in Pumpadisa, they had the version different. Masnu by Rav Amri, so they said that in Rav's yeshiva they taught Mishmei de Rav in the name of Rav, Tlas and Dalet, that either there's 3 steps or 4 steps. And the reason is because in Pumpadisa, they actually did count. The last time that it's being rinsed off with water, they did count that. So therefore comes out that in a case where it was already moist from before, so you're putting the ashes and then the water, and then ashes again, and then water again. Huh? What? Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Plus,
you want to finish off with water at the end, probably, because
to rinse it off with water. Okay, 1 second. So in Pumpadisa again, in Pumpadisa they said 3 and 4. It's basically the way it was explained before, according to Shmuel. That's what Rashi here says. And Shmuel Amar Daled Vehei, and Shmuel said 4 times or 5 times. Oh, here the Gemara will explain. Okay, let's see. The point of here is that in Pumpadisa, when it says, according to Rav, that it's either 3 or 4, so what it's saying is that it has to be, you have to put ashes twice. Rav agrees to Shmuel that you have to put ashes twice. That's why Rav also said that it's either 3 times or 4 times. So 3 times is in a case where it was dry, so again, 3 times is in a case where it was moist. So then you're putting first ashes, and then water, and then ashes again. In a case where it was when it was dry, so then you have to put first water, then ashes, then water again, then ashes again. That's why it's exactly like we said before, according to Shmuel. Shmuel says Dalid and Hey. He says that there's 4 steps and there's 5 steps. So the Gemara explains, V'loi pligi, there's no machlokes here between Rav and Shmuel according to this version of Pumpadisa. Because Mar kachoshev ma'e basroi. When Shmuel says that there's either 4 steps or 5 steps, he's also counting the last time you're rinsing it off with water. Even though it's not really part of the drying up the wine, but he's also counting that last step of rinsing it off, so it comes out to be either 4 or 5 steps. But Rav is not counting the last step of putting the water there to rinse it off, so therefore it comes out to be either 3 or 4. So according to this version in Pumpadisa, there is no machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. They both agree that you have to scrub it with ashes twice. According to the version before in Surah, there was a machlokes, whether it has to be scrubbed with ashes once or twice. That's an according to the Gemara. Okay, that's confusing enough, I hope. This is all according to one shot in Rashi, which is Rashi brings it from Lashon Moiri, from his teacher. But the most Rishonim learn Pshat in the Gemara this way. There is another Pshat in the Gemara that Rashi brings from his father, which switches the whole Pshat in the Gemara, but we'll leave it at this. Okay, let's go weiter. The question was asked from Rabavo, Hani Gurgi the Armoi. The Gurgi, which is some kind of a net that was used, either it's made in a net, or Rashi maybe says it's in a kind of a box, where they basically wanted to put the grapes or olives that were being pressed, so that when you press it, you put down a heavy board to press it, so the grapes and the olives don't fly all over the place. So this net that it's stored in, when it's being pressed, the armai of Goyim. What's done with it? Meaning, if you want to kasher it, if Goyim were the ones that use this for their press, how can you kasher this, cleanse it to be used? Amalei Rabavo, so Rabavo said, Tenisua, we learned this in a Braise that speaks about this, and more details. Harei shayu gitov, or beis badov, if a person has, whether it's a wine press or an olive press, tmeyin. So here speaking about tum actually, if it was tamei, or bikish lasesam betara, and he wants to purify it and use it, that it should be done with tara. So how do you purify it? Hadafin. So when it comes to the boards, that the heavy boards that are used for the pressing, for ha'adashin. According to Rashi, the adashin refers to the floor of the actual wine press itself. V'halulavin, and the brooms that are used for it to sweep. Madichon, you can just rinse it off, and that's good enough. So Rashi here points out, when it says here Madichon, this is a chiddush, because regarding the actual wine press itself, the fact that it's enough to just rinse it off and you don't have to dry it up with the process that it said before with ashes, it seems like that this Braise is arguing with what it said before in the Mishnah, and Rashi says, we paskin like this, that it's not necessary to have the whole process of drying it up properly, as it was mentioned before. That's Rashi's pshat. Other Rishonim, though, disagree. They say that the adashin does not refer to the floor of the wine press, it refers to something else that would be only enough to rinse it off. V'ha'akalin shel netzarim, The akalin, which refers to this basket that's made out of nitzarim, which is palm branches, and that's where the grapes are being stored in, or vishal bitzputs, if it's made from something else. Bitzputs, I think, is hemp. So this is a kind of material that absorbs, but in order to cleanse it, what would you have to do? It's not enough to rinse it. Menagvan. It has to be dried up with the ashes, explained before, to be dried up properly. Now, v'shal shifa v'shal gemi, if this basket is made from reeds, which absorbs even more, it's not going to be enough to rinse it, not even to dry it up with the process mentioned before, but miyashnon yud beis chaydish. You have to let it be over 12 months, and then it could be used again. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, manichon migas legas. So this last case here mentioned, you don't have to let it for 12 months, you can let it from 1 year over to the next year, from the wine press of 1 year to the next year when you press wine, or mibad labad, if it's olive press, from 1 year to the next season, the following year when you press. Now the Gemara asks on this, what Rav Shimon Gamliel is saying, Hainu Tanakama, it's the same thing. Tanakama says you wait 12 months, from 1 year to the next year, to use the wine press or the olive press, it also is 12 months. And says the Gemara, not necessarily is it going to be full 12 months. According to Rav Shimon Gamliel, it could be more, it could be less. It could be nayu churfi va'afli. It could be a difference if it's a case where the season comes early or the season comes late. It depends when the grapes are the harvest time, or when you bring it in. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. So that's lav dafke exactly 12 months, according to Rav Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Yosi says, haroitze letaran miyad. So these baskets that are made from this, from shifa and shalgemi, so they absorb. You say you have to wait 12 months, but if you want to purify it and use it immediately? So how could you immediately use it? Magilon bereischen, you could kasher it. Magilon is when you use hot water, and that kashers it. It takes out any absorptions. Or similar with waters that was used to cook olives in it. Before they would press the olives, they would cook the olives, and that water, hot water, so you could then pour that hot water over these baskets. That you could do something else. Manichon tachas tziner, you place it under a pipe of water or under a gutter. That's the rainwater is coming down from the roof. Shemeim of makalchen, the water is dripping on it. Oy b'mayan shemeim of reitfin, or you put it into a wellspring where the water is rushing, and you leave it there for how long? V'kama, how long do you leave it there? Oyna, for one time period, and that will cleanse it. The Gemara will soon explain what is this oyna, how long that is. Now the Brisa concludes, Kederech she'amru b'yayin nesach, just like this was said regarding yayin nesach, kach amru b'taris. The same was also said in the process of purifying something that was tamei. Now the Gemara clarifies this last line, klape lai, in which direction is the Brisa saying this? B'taris kaiminan. The Brisa started off saying someone that wants to take his wine press and purify the different parts of the wine press. So it should say that just like by taris, so too by yayin nesach. So Ella, the Gemara corrects it, kederech she'amru b'taris, just like it was said regarding taris, kach amru b'yayin nesach. The same is the process of purifying or kashering something that was used with a guy that had his wine in it from yayin nesach to be able to be used. How long is that time period that Rabbi Yosi says that you place it under the water from a gutter that's running or in a wellspring? Either 12 hours of the day or 12 hours of the night. Rabchana she'ina. V'amrila Rabchana bar she'ina. Amar Rabbi bar Bachana, said in the name of Rabbi bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that it's actually chatzi yom v'chatzi laila, half a night and half a day. So the Gemara explains, Omer Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak v'loi pligi. It's not a machlekes if it has to be a whole day or a whole night or half day, half night. It depends what time of the year it is. B'tkufas Nisan v'Tishrei. If it's in Nisan and Tishrei, which is the time of the year where basically the night and the day is equal. It's 12 hours day, 12 hours night. So then is when it says that it could be a whole day or a whole night, because that's full 12 hours. And and when it says it has to be part night and part day, it's because it's either Tammuz time or Tevis time, where the night could be much longer than the day, or the day is much longer than the night. So you have to have part of the day and part of the night to make up for 12 hours. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Hani Ravki da Armoi. These Ravki, which are these sacks that they put inside it, the sediments of the wine, in order for the wine to drip out of it, to get the leftovers of wine that you can get from it. So this from Goyim. So how do you kasher this if you want to use it? The mazya, if it's made from hairs, from human hairs, so they don't absorb that much, madichan, you could just rinse it off. The amra, if it's made from the wool, so then menagvan, that's something which absorbs more. You're going to have to dry it up properly, the process mentioned before. The kisna, if it's made from flax, even drying it up won't be enough. Miyashnan, so it's going to be necessary to leave it for 12 months, as mentioned. Now, v'yike katri, if it has knots, sharilu, you have to untie these knots in order for it to dry up properly. Hani the kuli v'chalasa the armai, these baskets or other kinds of baskets that are made actually in the shape of beehives. They're also used for sifting wine. That's these kind of baskets we're talking about. If you have baskets or baskets made in this shape that's used to sift the wine in it. The chiti, bechavli, again, second, the chiti, if it's, or the chaiti, that is. Let's see, read it over here. So, second, what do I have the translation of it? The chaiti bechavli ditsuri. So if it's made, meaning it's put together with chavli ditsuri, which means from palm branches. Okay, so then what do you do with it? Madichan. These palm branches, they don't absorb that much. It's enough to rinse it off. The tzafsa, if it's made from tzafsa, which is again, Rashi says gemi, kind of reeds. So then, as we already said before, lenagvan, or the gears on the side over here is minagvan. You have to dry it up properly. The kisna, if it's made from flax, miyashna, you have to leave it for 12 months. V'ibisbu kitri, as we mentioned right before, if it has knots in it, sharilu, you have to untie these knots. Itmar, we learned a machlaikis regarding this subject here. Amaretz shahishit yodei lagas, an amaretz that touched a wine press, and v'naga ba'ashkeiles, and what he touched in this wine press was the clusters of grapes that were placed there. So Rabbi and Rab Chia argued about this. Chadomar, one of them said, Eshkel v'chol svivaisav tmein, the cluster of grapes, and the other cluster that he touched, another cluster of grapes around it, that's what's tamei. But v'chol agas kula, the rest of the wine press, tahira, will all be pure. But v'chadamar, another opinion over here is kol agas kula nami tameya. Not only the cluster of grapes in that area where he touched it will be tamei, the entire wine press becomes tamei. Okay, so the Gemara asks, according to the opinion that said that Eshka v'chol sviva yisav tmeim, only this cluster of grapes and what's around it, that becomes tamei. But v'chol agas kula tahira, the rest of the wine press all remains pure. So my shno mihodetnan. Why is this any different than this Mishnah where it says a similar kind of thing regarding olives? Sheretz shenimtza berechayim. Olives that are found in a mill where they grind the sheretz that's found in the mill where they grind olives. This is apparently before it was pressed. It's placed into this mill to grind it. Eina metame, ella mokem agoy. So it's only metame the olives that were in that area in the mill where the sheretz was found. But v'emaya mashke mahalach. But if there's liquid that's in this wine, that it's in this mill that is flowing, then akel tamei, because of the water that's there, everything will be tamei. So the question is, if you say this regarding the olives in the mill, that the liquid makes everything tamei, the same should be in a wine press where you have clusters of grapes there and there's wine that's flowing, there's liquid there. So from one piece to another piece, everything should become tamei. So why is there one opinion that says that only those cluster of grapes in that area is tamei? Answers the Gemara, Hasam lemafsik v'loy midi. In the case of the olives are not on clusters. The olives is pieces of olives flowing in the water. So there's no hefsik between them. It all becomes tummy with the water. That makes it all one. Here though, because the grapes are still on their clusters of grapes, so it separates between one piece and the next piece. The moisture doesn't make it all one, and therefore only in that area will it be tummy, but the rest of the wine press will be tired. So Oirule Rabbana le Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Rabbanan paskin to Rabbi Yirmiyah, Vamrila leBrei de Rabbi Yirmiyah, others say that they paskin to the son of Rabbi Yirmiyah, Kedivrei Aimer, like the opinion that says that Eshka v'chol svivaisav tamein. That if Amaretz touched, so then that area where he touched, that cluster of grapes, is going to be tamei, and what's around it is also tamei, but v'chol hagas kula tahira. But the rest of the wine press will still be tahir. Okay, the Mishnah, the last Mishnah, this is the last Mishnah of the Masechta. A person that buys vessels, this is vessels that's used to serve food in it. He buys them from a guy. So what has to be done with it? How do you kasher it that you can use it? So if this is utensils that the guy didn't use it in cooking or with anything hot, he's just using it to drink with it cold. So then so this is something that you immerse in water. It's used with cold water. So yatbel. What you have to do when you buy from a guy kalim, tefillah, you have to tevel it in water. The Gemara will bring. This is the halachas of this Mishnah. All the details is learned from what it says in the Psukim when they came back from Midian and they brought all the kalim. So the pasuk there says that any kalim, all kalim you buy from a guy, there's the mitzvah minatayr of tevilas kalim. You have to tevel the kalim before you use it. And then there's other cases where now lahagil, if the guy uses this, it's pots that he cooks with it, and there's boiling hot water in it. So then yagel, the way to use it, it's not enough to tevel it. You're gonna have to kasher it properly with boiling hot water. Yagel is when with boiling hot water, it takes out the absorption from the walls of the pots. But besides that, you have to tevel it as well. As the Gemara will say, all kalim of a guy, besides the kashering, you also have to tevel it. Now, if this is something that the guy uses directly inside the fire, then you labim ba'or. Then this is something that you also, it's not going to be enough to kasher it with boiling hot water. You're going to have to kasher it directly in fire. And what's the example for this? Hashpud, a spit, which is put into the fire directly, or v'ha'askala, a grill, malabdam ba'or. This is something that you're going to have to kasher directly in fire. A sakin, a knife, how do you kasher a knife? Shofar. So you scrub it off, or you scrub it on a rack, or the Gemara will describe exactly how you do this. V'hi tahira, and that's how you could kasher a knife. Okay, Zok the Gemara Ton. We learned in Abraisa. When you look in the Mishnah here, the Mishnah seems to be saying that there's a case where you have to tevel what you buy from a guy, but there's other cases where you're kashering it with hot water or directly in the fire. But then it would seem that it does not have to be tevel. So the Gemara brings the Abraisa and says, "Navekulan." Anytime you buy from a guy, it always needs to be teveled in a proper mikveh, a 40 saw. What's the source for this? That even those kalim that you already are kashering them in hot water or with a fire, it also has to be teveled. Because the pasuk says, Kol dava sheyavi be'esh, anything that the guy used with heat and fire, tavira be'esh, in order for you to kasher it, you also have to bring it in fire. And then it says v'toyer. Afterwards, the pasuk uses the word v'toyer. So why is it saying the word v'toyer? Right, so the pasuk is saying, besides kashering it, the rule of kashering, as Rashi here brings, is always kebailoi kach pailtei. The way it absorbed what's not kosher, in order to get it out from the walls, you have to use the same element of heat to get it out. That's one thing. But then besides that, it's saying v'toyer, the pasuk is adding tara cheres, another thing to be mitayr, which is to tevel it in the mikveh. Now, Tani Bar Kapare taught in a Braisa a different source for this, that the kalim always have to be teveled. Toich Shanema, the pasuk says, B'mei nida, over there in the same parsha, the Torah says, or in the same pasuk actually, it says v'toyer. It says that b'mei nida yischata. So what does this mean? B'mei nida, you have to be mitayer it. So mei nida usually actually means, the word nida means to spray. You sprinkle water over it. So shemei ani, what it sounds like it's saying is shetzarech hazah shlishi yishvi, that you have to sprinkle the waters, maybe the waters from the paraduma on it, third day and the seventh day, like someone that's you being mitayer someone from a tumas mace. That's what it would sound like. Talmud Laimar, but the lashon of the pasuk there is ach. It says ach b'mei nida yischata. Ach cholak. That's coming to make a distinction. What it's saying is that it doesn't have to be sprayed the third and the seventh day. So what do the words mei nida mean? It means mayim shenida tevelas b'hem. It refers to a woman that's a nida that has to immerse in a mikveh. So to over here, you have to take the kalim and immerse them in a proper mikveh. Have a oime arbaim saw. It has to be immersed in a proper mikveh of 40 saw. So we have two sources from the extra word v'toher, and then the pasuk goes on to say ach b'mei nida. So the Gemara explains, it's necessary to have the source from the word v'toir and v'meinida. And you also need the source from what it says b'meinida. Because ikasa v'toir, if we would only say the word v'toir, havamine, then I would say that v'toir means b'choldu, that you can be mitayirit in any kind of pool of water, not necessarily a proper mikvah 40 saw. Because of Rahmana b'meinida, so the Torah writes b'meinida that has to be in a mikveh that a nida tavels in. On the other hand, because of Rahmana b'meinida, if we would only say b'meinida, so then havamina, I would think that there's a certain condition that applies here, just like by a nida. Harav shemesh kenida. Just like a nida has to wait until after nightfall, so to here, you have to wait to tavel kalim until at night. Because of Rahmana v'tar la'alter. The Torah says, v'tar, you can purify it immediately, you buy it, you tavel it, and you can use it right away. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman said, the name of Rabba bar Avua, afil kelim chadoshim b'mashma. That this halacha, that when you buy kelim from a guy, that you have to tavel it, that's even if it's brand new kelim. The guy never used it. Why? Because the hayishein in Vilibnon, what did the Brisa here just say? When it comes to old kelim, that the guy did use, but now you already kashed it properly. So, kichadoshim domo. As far as anything that it absorbed that was treif, it's gone. It was already kashed, so it's like brand new. And you still have to go ahead and tavel it in water, additionally, as we learned from the pasuk. So we see over here that seemingly the point has nothing to do with the fact that there's non-kosher absorptions in this kelim. It's a separate mitzvah that the Torah says that in order to be allowed to use kelim from buying from a guy, the ownership of the guy, you buy it from him, you have to tavel it. Yeah, of course, 100%. Yes, 100% minatayra, correct. Maskeflo Rav Sheshes, so Rav Sheshes asks on this, if that's the case, it has nothing to do with the absorptions of non-kosher things, even brand new kelim of a guy, so why would this be only by kelim that are used for food? If so, afila zuzi the sarbal enami. Even if you're buying a scissors that's used by a tailor for wool, it's a keli owned by the guy. It's like Zayda Sakosov that a yid has to tavel before he uses. Nothing to do with food, nothing to do with kashrus. Amalei, so you answered him, no, kli suda amurim beparsha. When you look in the Torah, it only is speaking about kelim that are used for food. Only there, because that's the lashon the pasuk over there, called avashiyave be'esh. What do you don't take a scissors that's used for a tailor, you don't put that in fire. That's something that's used to cook in. So therefore in the lashon of the parsha, it's clear that it's talking only about things that are used for food. There is where you have the Gzeidus HaKosov, that when you buy kelim for food, even if it's brand new, never used for food, it's going to be there's going to be this chiyuv to tavel it. Okay, so now when you learn the simple pshat of the Gemara, and this is what it says in some Mefarshim, that the tevilah has nothing to do with non-kosher absorptions. It's just a separate Gzeidus HaKosov, the ownership of the guy, you chayiv to tavel it. What the Rebbe in a Sikh in Parshas Matos and Chelik Yud Ches, the Rebbe says, and the Rebbe's medayik this from a lashon of Rashi al Atayra, that the maskana of the Gemara, when it says here that it's only kli suda and a chanami, that it doesn't mean that there's actual absorptions of the guy, but why is it taka only kli suda? Because kli suda, which is something that there's a possibility, it's in the possession of the guy, where there's a possibility for the guy to use it for non-kosher foods, that's where the Gzeidus HaKosov applies, that you have to tavel it. It's not the etzem ownership, that there's this separate concept where the Torah says that there's a tumah of the ownership of the guy, and then the yid that buys it has to be metayired from that tumah. It's not what it is. It's the efsharos of it being able to be used for foods that will have non-kosher absorptions, even if there wasn't, even if it's brand new. The Torah says the very fact that it was in that condition that it could have been used for this, you have to tavel it. And that's why it only applies to Kli Suda. One of the things that the Rebbe explained with this is why when you sell the kelim to a guy, Pesach, why after Pesach, when you buy it back from the guy, why don't you have to be tavel it? It was owned by the guy, and you're buying it back, and so you have to tavel all your kelim after Pesach. The answer is because when we sell to a guy, it's boifin kazeh that it's completely not shchiach for the guy to come and use it b'chlal. So it doesn't fall into this category of kelim that were in the possession of the guy, where he had the possibility to use it for non-kosher use, for not with non-kosher food. And therefore over here, this halacha of tefillas kelim will not apply. That's how the Rebbe explained this Indian. Rebbe brings rayas from Rishonim also, but that's the maskan of the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, Zloishanu ela b'lekuchen. So this whole halacha of taveling when you buy from a guy is when you're buying from him. Ukamaisa shahaya, and like it was in the pasuk when they got from Kli Midyan, it changed ownership. They brought the kelim from the Midyan to the Yidden. But if you borrow kelim from a guy, loy, then it doesn't apply. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Zavan Mana de Marda Mo'evik Echav. Yitzchak bar Yosef brought a keli that was made in Marda. It's made from earth and from dung, from animals. Not a very good quality kind of a keli. Savalat bila. So I thought that the halacha would apply to this as well, that you have to taivel the kelim. So one of the Rabbanan said, Rabbi Yaakov Shemei, and his name is Rabbi Yaakov, and he said, Rabbi Yochanan explained to me and said, Kli matches amurim beparsha. In the Torah, in the source, it says metal kelim. All the examples there in the pasuk, it mentions kli zov, kli kesev, all examples in the pasuk is only metal kelim, and that's what has to be taivel. But the other kinds of kelim that are made from these materials do not have to be taivel. For today as well, plastic kelim, things that have such material, you do not have to taivel. Now the Gemara says, what's with glass? It's not. That does not say in the parsha. Rav Ashi says, Hani klis choches, glass kelim, hoyel. If glass breaks, if you can gather the glass and then melt it, and you can make a new keli out of it, similar to metal. When metal breaks, so you melt it and you form it again, so it has a similarity, so therefore it's going to be necessary to taivel glass as well. Because it's the klimatches dom. It's similar to what it says in the pasuk. Kunya, if it's kelim that is kunya, which means that this is made from earthenware, but it's plated. It's plated with some metal or with some kind of a metal or maybe lead. So pligi bar Ravacha v'Ravina. Ravacha and Ravina argue about this. I look at what the keli itself is in the beginning. It's earthenware, so you don't have to taivel it. But others say that no, you look at the plated part which is metal, and therefore it does have to be taiveled. And the halacha is that if it's plated, it does have to be taiveled, but the Paiskim say that it's only if it's plated on the interior, where it comes in contact with the food. But if it's not plated inside, you don't have to taivel it. The shaila was asked, mashkanta mai. What's if you have a mashkin, a collateral, that a guy gives you for a loan that he owes you? Do I compare this to something which is an acquisition, and if you want to use it, you have to taivel it? Or is it like we mentioned before, if you're borrowing kelim from a guy, you don't have to taivel it? So Ravashi said, my father, Mishkan le'evik costa de kaspa, a guy gave him a mashkin, a silver becher, and he did taivel it, and only then did he use it to drink from it. But Ravashi said he doesn't know though if this will answer the shaila here, because I'm not sure is because Yitaka held that a mashkin is significant enough to be like an acquisition that you have to taivel it, or he saw this guy when he gave him this silver becher that he's not going to pay back his loan. He's giving him this silver becher to keep, and therefore this is mamish like an acquisition, and it's not a mashkin anymore. Tana Rabbanan and Abraisa we learned you buy these kelim that are used for food from a guy. So things that the guy did not use it, and it means he didn't use it he didn't use it at all. So he didn't use it with hot, no absorptions of things that are not kosher. So matbilan, so you have to taivel it, and it's pure, it's good to use. Things that he did use, but he used it only in cold. Kaises, cups, vikitainis, different jugs, and small jugs, bigger jugs. Madichan, so you rinse it off, so because there should be any residue from what he used it in it. Matbilan, and you taivel it, and it's good to use. If it's his pots that he used to heat up hot water in it, big pots, smaller pots or kettles, the urn. So then, with hot water, you have to kasher it with hot water, and then additionally, you have to taivel it, and then it's tired. Or if it's things that he used exposed directly to fire, spits and grills, malabnon, so then you're going to have to kasher it and fire directly, and then additionally you have to taivel it, and it's hard to be used. In all of these cases, if the yid that bought from a guy did use these kalim before he taiveled it, or v'shaloi yagil, before he kashed it, whether with hot water or directly in fire. So what happens now? But the Yeved used it. So Tanicha, then one brayso we learned aser, that the food is going to be aser. For the Tanya Idach, and a different brayso we learned mutter, that the Yeved, the food is going to be mutter. And the Gemara explains, what are these two brayses? It's a machlokes, like kasher. Not a question, because we had this machlekes earlier in the Masechta. Ha commander Omar Noisen Tam Levgam Aser. One brayse is the opinion that says that when you have taste of something which is aser, that is going into your food that you cook there, but it's a tam levgam. It gives a bad flavor. So then that's going to be aser. Even if it gives a bad flavor, it's still going to be aser. So if you're using these pots from a guy that has a bad flavor that comes from the walls, because after such a long period of time, whatever flavor comes out from the absorption of the walls, it's a bad flavor. So it's still going to be aser. So the food will be aser even with the evet. Hakamandama, the other brayse that says that it's mutter, holds nois and tam levgam, mutter. When it gives a bad flavor, so it's mutter. So with the evet, it's going to be mutter. Okay, so the Gemara says, according to the opinion that says that if it gives a bad flavor, then it'll be mutter. So this halacha by midyon that it says there in the pasuk taviru ba'eish v'toir, that you must first put it in fire to get out the bad absorptions that there is in the walls. What is the Torah talking about? The Gemara asked this question already earlier in the Masechta as well. That if you say that noisen tam levgam, the isser, if it's a bad flavor, there is no isser at all. So why is the Torah saying that it's necessary, besides toiveling it, also to kasher it? Amar Rav Chia barei de Rav Huna, Rav Chia, the son of Rav Huna says, when it says there by Midyan that it has to be kashered, that's only those pots that they brought from Midyan that was used on that very day. If it's from that day, then it's going to be aser. But if it's from a day before, then it's already nice and tam of gam. So if it's that bas yaima, the lav nice and tam of gamu, then it's not nice and tam of gam. Okay, so now according to Rashi, here's where Taisus talks about this. I mentioned before also when we learned this. According to Rashi, as long as it's overnight, it's already nice and tam of gam. Other Rishonim though say that nice and tam of gam is only if it's a 24-hour period from when it was used last. Or machmer always like those Rishonim. So over here, Rashi is saying that bas yoyme. The Gemara bas yoyme means that day. That's why by Midyan the Torah is saying that it has to be kashed. So the Gemara asks if that's the case. So then, if you have kalim from a guy that was already from a day before, so you should only have to taivel it. There should be no reason to kasher it. It should be allowed. But why is it that we see that we kasher kalim that a guy used even from a day before? Says the Gemara, that's only with the Rabbanon. According to this opinion, that nice and tam of gam is mutter, which we pass on like this opinion. So the fact that we kasher even kalim that is from a day before, it's all gzeira, not to confuse the two. Now the idach, but the other opinion that says that nice and tam of gam is going to be aser, he'll tell you can't make this distinction, whether it's kalim from this day or from the day before. Kedeire bas yaime nami mifkam pagma. Even kalim that the guy used on that very day, he used it a couple of hours before, and there's what's absorbed in the walls of the kalim. When a yid comes to use, the flavor that comes out of the walls, even from a couple of hours before, is not anymore have a good flavor, and therefore it's also levgam. So therefore, from here we learn out that the fact that the Torah says you have to kasher kalim from midyan, it means that nice and tam levgam is also going to be aser. And just like it's aser when it's nice and tam levgam from the same day, so this mandama holds from the day before, it's the same thing. There's no nafkamina. Mashenk and the other mandama says no. Even if it's true that the taste from the same day is not anymore a good taste, but it's not as bad as from a day before. From a day before is when it's really levgam. From the same day, it's not exactly the same kind of pagam, and therefore over here, minat Torah, you'll have to kasher it.